one of the big things that we need to understand is that traditional martial arts, and obviously for us this includes Wing Chun, but most karate styles and kung fu styles, when it comes to the hand-to-hand, that's really talking about fairly close quarters combat. Now, in Wing Chun, generally speaking, right, it's palm distance away from the target, arms stretched out at shoulder level. Um, and everybody kind of defines things a little bit differently, and that's okay. But the fact is that, especially within the traditional martial arts, what we see way too often is people practicing their traditional one steps and bunkai and things like that, and then not actually performing when it comes to sparring or fighting, not actually performing in the ranges that they're training in. And that is a very, very clear indication that just kind of what I would call static drilling. I know it's not static in the sense of you're not moving, but static in the sense of prescribed choreographed drilling is not enough because you're not playing with the stress levels and you're not playing with the decision making, and stress and decision making are one of the biggest parts of all of this. And that's why sparring and scenario drills and things like that are far, far more important, or at the very least equally important to all of the technical work. And one of the big things is, for those of us in the traditional side of the martial arts, or at least those of us who have one foot in the traditional side of the martial arts, have to understand that getting close doesn't automatically have to mean doing jiu-jitsu, right? Now, never mind the fact that I'm a catch wrestler, I don't do jiu-jitsu, but the point is that grappling is all well and good. Grappling is necessary. Grappling is a massive part of what the overall martial arts picture is, and it is a significant part of your toolkit. However, if you are a striker or you are using a more mixed toolkit, you have to be able to use your striking in close. Obviously, we see holding and hitting in most of these traditional styles, and even in certain combat sports like, say, Muay Thai, who has maintained the clinching. And again, in Muay Thai competition, you're going to see some clinch work, but because they actually train it and spar with it. Whereas kind of in the karate and kung fu world, and even in sanda, and my understanding of at least amateur sanda is you're not allowed to hold and hit, which doesn't make any sense given how holding and hitting is a massive part of all these kung fu styles, and even the old school English boxing, that predated the modern gloves rules and everything. All of that was in there, right? So it dawned on me to kind of work on finding ways to address getting people to get in and kind of stay in, right? You've heard the whole get in, get out, get in, get out, and that's fine, right? The whole stick and move thing. If you're trying to score points, if you're trying to score clean hits and get back to safety, right? If you're trying to wear somebody down, there's a lot of good reasons to get in, get out. I'm not saying that that's bad. However, get in and stay in is also valid. And obviously grappling is a get in and stay in methodology. But the thing is that old school striking kind of works that way too. At least it can. It may not be obligated to, but it can work that way. And so over the years, I've come up with some things. And to be fair, saying I've come up with it is a little bit of a misnomer. A lot of these things are kind of borrowed from other ideas that I've seen. Maybe I've taken my own take on them. But the fact is that I haven't really invented anything. I've just taken something and run with the ball, right? And there are kind of four major modalities that I like. Now, obviously, yes, doing static drilling to get people into the idea of this is how the technique works. Here's your ideal angles, and here's the timing on the feet, and blah blah blah. That's all well and good, and it is, to my opinion, necessary. But when we get into the points where people need to be able to make decisions and work under a little bit of stress, there are 4 get in and stay in modalities that I like that basically force you to stay, at that arm's reach that we like to play in. So obviously, as a Wing Chun school, right, number one thing, like, we're going to be looking at Chi Sao. Now, all of these have their limitations. Chi Sao is limited in the sense of you are starting from a bridge and you are obligated to work from a bridge. And that's what makes Chi Sao Chi Sao. For those of you who are not Wing Chun people, the bridge is just any contact point between 2 bodies. And that can be 1 hand, it can be 2 hand, what we call hand and a half, which is similar to what they do in karate called kakedameshi, where you have a single bridge, but both hands are active. You can do so with including kicking or excluding kicking, all that. Very similar to grip fighting in wrestling, except we're aiming ultimately for strikes as opposed to holds. And there are other sensitivity drills from other styles and other systems that are just as valid there. We don't have a corner on the market by any stretch of the imagination. It's just kind of one of the things that we're known for. So Chi Sao is incredibly valuable. It doesn't replace sparring, and some people will say it's not sparring. It functions similar to sparring, but it's not sparring in the sense of you have the artificial starting point and the artificial condition of you must be working from a bridge, so you work from a bridge. Typically, you work from the Pun Sao rolling, and then you work through, free play. Some people are very strict on working through prescribed routines. That's fine. I think there's limitations to that. And then free play, of course. Next is Pakta. Now, those of you who haven't been around for a while might not understand this because most schools just kind of stop at just the basic slap and punch, and they just work on it as basic hand cycling. But because hand cycling is so important, even in Chi Sao, and over the course of the system, you'll find out that we have this fully 3-dimensional hand cycling that creates this kind of 180-degree bubble around us, or at least should be able to create that. We've advanced the Pakta drill into this very, very broad-reaching, broad-scoped idea. And again, just like Chi Sao, the artificial thing is that you're obligated to work from that base pattern. And if you get lost and too deep into the weeds and it starts just becoming regular sparring, you revert back to that base pattern. It is, in my opinion, it's every bit as important as Chi Sao, if not more important, because even in Chi Sao, you have to be able to cycle your hands. And Pakta is entirely about cycling your hands. So it is an incredibly useful and important drill. But again, it has that artificial starting point of like, you're already there, you're in the pocket. Now, that's going to be true for all of these. So you are going to have to work on entry work separately from these. But the reason that we do this, where we force people to sit in the pocket and stay there, is the idea of if you get comfortable sitting in the pocket, you're going to be used to that confined space, the lack of visibility, having to rely on sensitivity, keeping 3-dimensional coverage going, and potentially just like learning how to take a hit, suck it up, and keep moving, right? So very useful, but it does not cover entries. You could work entries into it, but really that's going to work into things like asymmetrical sparring, what I call bully drills, and to a large degree even just regular sparring, working on that. All right, so next we have wall work. Now, I like wall work a lot. In the current temporary space that we're in right now, where we're kind of rebuilding everything after the last couple of years, wall work, originally started off as a proxy for cage and ropes, because you can work corners and flats and just kind of figure out how to deal with, like, if somebody's got you pressed up against something you can't retreat, how do you play defense? How do you, work your way off of it? Or how do you turn them around and put them in that disadvantaged position? And we do all of that. The wall work is really, really beneficial, though, especially because so much of what we do in traditional martial arts is kind of based on this idea of like defense first and offense later because of the idea of self-defense and all that. We can debate whether that's true to history or not, but the point is that the modern practice is almost always going to be self-defense first, which kind of means defense first. So when you have your back to your wall, like I am, and you can't move, and your opponent can move all around you, you work on playing defense, right? You can work on blocking, you can work on slight evasion, you can work on finding a hole to escape and get off the wall, and then finally you can work on trying to grab your opponent, turn them around, put them on the wall. And we run through those progressions, and it is a fantastic way, again, to just get used to the idea of like you're in close, you feel confined and cornered, and what do you do? So you just kind of work on dealing with that and moving through to find the thing that gets you to your position of advantage. Or if you're working on escape, work on escape, right? Generally speaking, we're working on winning fights, not escaping. But if you're working in a more purely self-defense scenario, escape is a fantastic end goal. And then lastly, and this is something we've only added recently, is tethered sparring. Now, with tethered sparring, what we started off with was using resistance bands tied around the ankles. And the idea was to mimic what boxers have done with like sticking a tire in the center of the ring, and each guy puts their lead foot in the ring, and they have to just basically work inside of that tire, and they can't step out of it. The problem with tethering the ankles, because I didn't want to have them confined to a single space, just wanted to have them confined to a range. The problem with that is by tethering their ankles like that, it confines them to a single lead. And despite having a combat sports side to what we do, I don't teach a purely orthodox or southpaw or anything like that. We aim to be very ambidextrous. And especially as soon as you add in kicking and grappling, you need to be able to work from both leads as well as being square. And that being the case, having them confined in a matched lead set, left foot to left foot or right foot to right foot, was too confining. I mean, it did something, but it was too confining. And so what we did was we took the straps off of a couple of duffel bags as belts. I'll probably get some tie-down straps as a kind of a permanent solution. And you just put a resistance band between the two of you. And I've found now that the little mini bands that people use for their legs for adductor warm-ups and whatnot are sufficient. Just kind of like a light medium grade is enough, provided you're not like trying to throw each other and stuff. And having the belt around the waist, yes, it's going to preclude a lot of your downward sweeping blocks. You're not going to find a ton of those happening anyway. And it does interrupt a little bit of kicking. Anything that kind of crosses the center line coming up is going to be having just as much trouble as those downward blocks. So there is some confinement that happens with it that just is kind of unavoidable. And the cool thing about it, though, is especially with the resistance band, and I'm using a resistance band on purpose with it, is the fact that you have a little bit of stretch in play. So you have a little bit of this rebound, but it still forces you to kind of just be in there. And so you can kind of extend out to, fingertip range or just beyond that and start throwing some of your kicking in there. And especially for traditional martial arts where the focus is on lower kicks, then the band doesn't matter that much because you can still kick the legs just fine and you can deal with the hands up top. And it is a fantastic way to get that in. And you can basically go pretty much full, at least striking sparring up to holding and hitting, clinch work and whatnot. You can do all of that with it and it works really well. Now, the thing that I like about it also is it's a couple of belted straps, right? You can go to the hardware store and get a pair of tie-down straps with just like the cam buckle for like $10 or something like that. And then I got a 10-pack of these elastic bands for like $12, $15. It's super cheap. You don't have to go out and get the expensive stuff. Just treat them as disposable, and buy new ones every 6 months if you have to. Like, it's not that expensive. Now you can do like confined space. We've seen some cool examples of like telephone booth boxing and car jiu-jitsu and stuff. And I think that stuff is cool. Using an actual environment is a really cool idea. Unfortunately, a lot of us don't have access to an actual environment that we can do, and we don't have a convenient way to proxy that. So having a cheap, basically $20 setup is way, way more convenient despite its limitations. And the thing is, if you cycle through these 4 things, you should get people pretty used to the idea of just getting in, staying in, being comfortable on the inside. Now, yes, again, I'm going to reiterate, you have to get used to the idea of working your entries, because if you don't work your entries, you're still going to have people that are scared to enter despite the fact that they're comfortable being inside. And there's a lot of ways to address that. And maybe we'll talk about that in another video later on. But this should give you some interesting ideas as to how to work on that close range stuff in ways that are more sparring like, that should give you a little bit more of an edge on the inside and getting you used to using your full skill set as it was intended, either in self-defense or in just natural fighting, but in that close range, as opposed to playing out on the outside like a kickboxer. And look, I love kickboxing. I made a video about it. I really love kickboxing. It's fun. It's Power Ranger stuff for me. But, it has its limitations too. So being able to work on the outside, being able to work on the inside, working at all ranges and through the full skill set of what we call martial arts is really important. And I find that the inside tends to be the role of grapplers. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't have to be. You should be able to use, especially your traditional martial arts, you should be able to use that on the inside, because that's what it was designed for. And that's what we should be using it for. All right, I'm going to leave it off there, and I will talk to you guys later. Good journey. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share. Check us out on our other socials, and please head over to blacksunboxing.com to get a little more info, including how to contact us. Furthermore, if you are in the Phoenix area, please feel free to stop in, say hi, join in for a class, whatever. Also, if you ever see us cite sources or just for additional content, please check out our Substack. That is where we put all of the sources we use in our videos and is a major part of this. Plus, it serves as a membership platform for long distance learning and for people who would like to support us but aren't local. We would greatly appreciate it if you signed up. Even just the free membership helps us out a lot. All right, I will see you guys in the next video. Good journey.